Hello, my friend, and welcome to the 456th episode of the Sales Podcast. I'm Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer, your host. Today, we're getting into how to read and diffuse the fear in selling with Dan Hill. Dan has a PhD in English. What the what? Interesting character, though. We get into his history, many years in business and sales and marketing, and we talk about why sales is a fear-filled environment and how you can and must read it and diffuse it. And you know what? We get into that in the 30-Day Sales Growth. Come hang out. Come get your questions answered. More and more, I'm talking to people. They don't know what is going on in this COVID environment. And I can't say that I know exactly what's going on, but the nice thing being 50 years old, being in sales 23 years, being the sole breadwinner for that entire time, for a family of 9, the things that I do work. And the insight that I've gained over those years has helped thousands of entrepreneurs, business owners, salespeople sell more. I've been through a few recessions. Military taught me a few things. I think I'm pretty well prepared for what's coming on. I was right in the prediction early on it, though, back in 2008. I saw the pain that was coming, prepared. Actually, I was launching the Sales Whisperer in late 06. I bought the URL. Early 07, started the business. And heck, I got a new Infusionsoft in summer, fall of 08. So when everybody was hunkering down, getting laid off, I was launching this venture. And it's been a good move. There's some pain coming in the fall and the winter of this year, 2020, and certainly going into 2021. There's things that just, like my dad always says, when things don't make sense, there's something you don't know. All right? And so there's always a lot of unknowns, but the big things can be known, okay? The timing, so back in 08, I didn't know exactly when the market would collapse, but I knew it was going to collapse. I knew it was crazy. So, the real estate market here in California it's not crazy like that, but it has gone up a good bit. The stock market is crazy. Companies staying open is crazy. But then you find out all the funding, the money. Congress is meeting now again. Economists are saying 1.75 trillion is needed at a minimum. It's just not sustainable. Okay? But there are still things you can do. So that type of spending is not sustainable. You can still grow in this type of environment. Okay? You've got to be attentive. You've got to be disciplined. And you've got to be, I don't know if optimistic is the right word. I'm not pessimistic. I'm a realist, right? If rain's coming, okay, rain's coming. I was a meteorologist in the Air Force. If I tell you there's a hurricane coming, it's not pessimistic. It just is. Right? You start boarding up your house, getting your generator geared up, getting some extra gas, some water. If you're going to ride it out, or you make plans to get out of town before the traffic. It's not pessimistic. It's realistic. So, I will help you navigate these waters as best as possible. And that's what we do in the 30-Day Sales Growth community. So come join us, all right? 30daysalesgrowth.com, making some changes to it, some enhancements, always working on it to make it better. But the ultimate thing that you get is live calls plus real-time interaction in the group. If you've got a question, you'll never go a day without hearing from me. You probably won't go 6 hours without hearing from me when you ask a question. So, let me help you, okay? Help me help you. 30daysalesgrowth.com. Join us. I hope you sell more better. Now let's bring on Dan Hill. Dan Hill, PhD, all the way from Minneapolis. Welcome to the Sales Podcast. How the heck are you?
I'm doing fine. Thanks, Wes.
So three's a charm, huh? We we reschedule for my coronavirus, then we reschedule because Frontier can't keep the internet running. But man, we can't keep a good man down, can we?
No, we're not giving up.
So how do you go from studying English to studying people? So you've written 8 books here. The most recent is Famous Faces Decoded, a guidebook for reading others. What brought about that transition? Because that seems like a big transition.
Yes and no. I mean, in one sense, it's a simple movement because I lived in Italy for 2 years as a boy. My father worked for the 3M company. When you are going to Italian first grade in a fishing village and you do not know the language, guess what? You have a lot of time to study the people in the classroom because you can't participate. You can't do the subjects other than math. So anytime you're in a strange environment, I think you just naturally pay attention if you've got any smarts to you at all. But I guess the professional reason would be that in 1998, someone I knew at IBM sent over an article about the breakthroughs in brain science, confirmation that we are indeed emotional decision makers. I think salespeople know that, but here was the proof in the pudding. And I was absolutely fascinated. My hands were trembling with interest when I finished reading the article. I decided I had to go into this field. I wasn't quite sure how, but I was going to pursue it.
Interesting. So do you remember the exact article?
Yes, it's called What Customers Can't Say by David Wolf in a Cornell University publication called American Demographics. Once I followed up on probably the most striking statistic, the conservative estimation is that at least 95% of our mental activity isn't fully conscious. In other words, we are driven by all these gut reactions that we are only dimly aware of. And quite honestly, that just made a lot of sense to me. But in business, people were still talking about the unique selling proposition and rational decision making. And I thought, well, that's part of the picture. But my God, there's a whole lot more going on.
So were you in sales at the time?
No, I was not. But I would say that we're all in sales. We have to win over our boss, our colleagues.
Right.
Back when I was high school, I created the soccer program. So I had to lobby the athletic director and the school board. And then eventually in running my company, of course, you have to be a salesperson if you're in charge of the company. You got to make sure that the deals close and you honor the contracts.
Yeah. So 95%. So when you get into reading people, I mean, obviously you have to have a presentation. You've got to have content at least at your fingertips or that you can recall. But, you know, are you advocating more of just let the customer think they're driving and kind of guides the sales conversation based on their input, or can you show up with a framework and steer the sales negotiation within that framework?
Well, I think the really first important thing about sales is that it's a fear-filled environment. As the salesperson, you come afraid that you might be wasting your time and effort, that this is someone who's not going to buy. And the prospect, the potential buyer, runs the risk of feeling like they're being preyed on, that you're the predator, that you're going to push really hard, that you're going to bombard them with phone calls and follow-up emails and so forth. Fear is not a good, it's not very conducive to communication because you tend to freeze up when you're afraid. So I think the first thing is to try to remove that fear. So yes, you run through the presentation, but in many ways, just as important or more important is before you get to the presentation, how do you develop affinity? One of the things I tend to do is say, where you're from, where'd you grow up, where'd you go to school? I'm looking for some way in which, I've been in that town. I know someone who went to that school, some way in which you can find commonalities, because it's not just mirroring their expressions, their attitude in the meeting. It's really getting a sense of who they are and seeing if you can match up in some way.
So do you get into like the disc profiles and stuff? Because I was taught all the same things, right? But as a consumer, I'm a high D. I don't like all the chit chat, and I know the games, right? Oh, you're gonna Oh, you find out in the Air Force, and your next door neighbor's best friend's barber, his son was in the Air Force. So therefore, we should be like best friends. And, let's just throw everything away and pour some bourbon and, let me just give you all my money. So, I mean, I don't like the chit chat as a consumer and even as the salesperson. Like I'll do it because I know there's some benefit there, but I do try to have it come out more naturally. But can it backfire, when you're dealing with a goal-oriented, task-oriented, high D or, the S types, the very analytical?
I think that's a fair concern. I mean, really, for me, one of the advantages of asking any questions is a chance for their talking rather than me presenting right away. And I get a chance to sit back a little bit and see how they're emoting. So someone who's a real driver, a real analytical type, I might see more anger on their face. Anger as an emotion is about, I want to be in control of my circumstances. I want to make progress. I might be impatient with the chit chat. So to me, I certainly don't come in, or I haven't come in the 20 plus years I've run my company and say, let's talk about the weather. I think where they went to school, where they grew up, how long they've been with the company, if that string feels natural and works well, that's fine. But I don't want to belabor it. And if I get a sense that there's someone who just, I'm busy, they're looking at their watch, their expression tells me this is not the way to go, you adjust, you pivot. And you move more toward the presentation. But again, at least some sort of warm up. I know when I was in corporate life, I did not like the vendors who came in and didn't get any sense of who I was or our objectives or goals in learning or why we invited them, why they got through the filter. They just launch into the 40-minute presentation, starting with who they are and why they were so important and wonderful in the world. And they had no sense of our needs or interests. And I just thought that was offensive. So that's why I don't like to barrel right into the egocentric presentation.
Yeah. Are you reading the room as well? Like looking for, is there artwork? Are there trophies, family? Is there a plant? I mean, do those things give clues?
Certainly. I mean, being a facial coder, naturally, I like the family portrait or a photograph of them with someone within the company. If they happen to have the CEO's photograph and they're getting an award from the CEO on the desk, asking why, what was the accomplishment. Most people, even if they're busy, maybe especially if they're a striver, would be happy to answer that kind of question, for instance. But yes, what they have in the room always reveals things. You're looking for context after all. Context as to who they are, why they want to talk to you, how you can help them. Any of that allows your comments to be more on the mark. I don't like the boilerplate presentation any more than I like the boilerplate chitty chat.
Yeah, amen. So are there obvious things, like, because they talk about so much is done unconsciously? Are we scowling or squinting or smiling without even knowing that we're doing it?
Oh, absolutely. We are only dimly aware of ourselves after all. That's the human predicament. How often in life, after a relationship that goes bad, all your friends go, I wondered what you saw in so-and-so. And then you go, yeah, I wonder too. But at the time you were jumping head first into the pool. So yes, there are probably two things to take into account. First is what's kind of their baseline. People do have signature expressions or things they fall back on. The writer George Orwell said, by the age of 50, a man has the face he deserves. We have muscle memory. We have things we just kind of gravitate to. So do I have a fairly happy camper? Do I have a grouch? Do I have someone who's really focused and conscientious? That's really good to know. And then I can see if they move off that baseline. On the other hand, there's also the give and take. So, if I'm commenting on certain things in the presentation or answering their questions or their objections, how are they taking it? What is their emotions in the moment in response to that specific aspect of the conversation? That's really valuable information because, again, you have to adjust. You're either flexible or you're roadkill as far as I'm concerned.
All right. I'll accept that. So
that's not chitty chat. That's getting right down to the basics.
You're either flexible or you're roadkill. I got to make sure all right. I just typed that out. So how hard is this to learn though? Because I don't want my people, just staring at, what is Dan doing? Oh, he's flicking his ear. Oh, he's crinkling his nose, and they lose sight of like the whole reason you're meeting. Can this be learned easily, or does it take a long time? Or are there little things we can learn that like I say, small levers swing big doors?
No, that's a good way to put it. First of all, the ear, itch is probably nothing important, so I wouldn't bother with trivialities. Facial coding I like because it's reasonably complicated enough that it's got some real nuance to it. And it's also reasonably simple enough that it's not like I'm dragging around, a 100-pound weight into a meeting. There are 7 core emotions that you can access through facial coding. There's happiness, of course. You want that because you are ultimately selling hope. They want to be happy. They're hoping to be happy. Surprise is really important because your eyes go wider, for instance. When you're surprised, you want a meeting with someone who's paying attention, who's inquisitive, who's eager for the information and solution you might bring. So you got a positive emotion, you got essentially a neutral emotion, surprise, because it can swing either way. It can be, I got a new car for Christmas, I got a new car accident on the way home from work. So surprise can go either way. And then you got 5 emotions that do have their upsides, but we probably think of them as negative emotions. And those are anger, fear, sadness, disgust, and contempt. There are 23 expressions that cover these 7 emotions. So I said there's a little bit of complexity, but I think of it as flexibility, as nuance. But, we're not talking 97 ways to pick up something. That's crazy. Nobody can keep track of that. And furthermore, to your question, I would say once you get a baseline for someone, you might see that there are certain emotions that really tend to stand out for them. Maybe they're a striver, maybe they're a hothead, then you're probably in the category of anger. If there's someone who's just a natural skeptic, well, that's worth knowing too. They might show a smirk, they might show contempt. If trust is the emotion of business, contempt is its opposite. So you really want to know if someone's just dubious about you, because now you got, frankly, a big hill to climb.
And do the body language and or verbal expressions, can they be out of sync? Can they, are you looking at everything? Are you focusing on the face? Can they be saying one thing, maybe nice sounding words, but they're, angry faces?
Oh, absolutely. There was a study done by a UCLA professor, what he called ambiguous situations, which definitely includes sales situations as well as a first date. And what the person concluded, the professor, is that in those situations, 55% of the true communication comes from the face, 37% from the voice, the tone, and merely 7% from the words. And, if you've never been lied to in life, Wes, congratulations. You're either really lucky or you're not paying attention. National Geographic ran a special article a few years ago on lying. Turns out the average person tells about 4 to 5 lies a day, and that's not when they're in a sales meeting. So, it goes on all the time. Other part of your question was, facial expressions versus body language. Body language can certainly tell you something, but it's got some problems with it. One is it doesn't have the specificity of facial coding. I can tell whether you're open, you're submissive, you're defensive. So I got kind of 3 categories versus 7. That's one issue because I don't have as much richness of input. The next thing is it can be faked more easily. Just watch the politicians during a presidential debate. They'll roll out certain hand gestures that they were coached to do by the consultant, and none of us believes them. And the third problem is it can be affected by gender and by culture. A hand gesture that's fine in Brussels might get you killed in Sicily, for instance. So, where someone's coming from in life can also be a real difference. So the face is universal. Even a person born blind emotes the same way as you or I.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, I forget what my son called it, but he spent a semester in India and I flew out to see him. And the Indians, like when they're happy or just just talking, their head, they'll bob left and right, almost like a no. And one time we were so confused. We were in this castle, and touring it, and it was kind of blocked off, this one exit, but not really. And I was trying to ask the guy, I was like, can we go that way? And he was smiling and kind of bobbing his head left and right. And I'm like, oh no, we can't go that way. And my son starts laughing, and basically the guy was saying yes. He was smiling and the head was kind of left to right, but I'm picking up the body language, and Jake's like, you got to look at the smile, and his body was kind of opening up like yes, go. And but he said they all learned that, living there, but it was just one little thing that I experienced culturally. That's just how they communicate, and so it's good that you bring it up, gender and culture. And because even if, we're in America, but the guy could be an immigrant, right? And still have the demeanor. I don't change just because I went and visit India. I don't change how I conduct myself because it's ingrained in us. So did you ever watch that show? What was it? Lie to Me? Was that any good? I never really watched it.
Well, and in fact, the leading modern expert on facial coding is a man named Dr. Paul Ekman, who was an advisor for the show. So, usually most episodes, there's at least one thing that's a bit outlandish. You couldn't release the expression from that far away or that quickly or at that angle. But mostly it was pretty accurate, because once you get this down, it certainly makes you, maybe you're not quite Sherlock Holmes, but at least you're not Watson anymore. You do get an awful lot better.
So do you win every poker tournament?
Nobody plays cards with me. I'm not a bad card player to start with, and then I have an extra advantage. Most times I end up just playing blackjack. The last time was in Rotterdam. This happened. I won the first, I think it was 11 hands. So after 3 hands, the 2 guys I was with said, we're not playing. We're just betting on your hand. And when I lost the 11th or 12th one, I walked away with my money.
Nice.
Nice.
So is it really, you don't play your cards, you're playing the other person?
Well, when I play blackjack, I have some real particular rules. I only play with a female dealer. I only take it if I can be in the 4th or 5th spot, so I have enough time to kind of get used to the hand and think about it a bit. I don't want to be rushed. And I won't take a place where there's a lot of onlookers. There's a lot of foot traffic behind me. I don't want the distractions. I want to concentrate on the task at hand. So, the facial coding doesn't really help me much. I mean, I can look a little bit at the other players, but I'm really playing my hand.
Blackjack's different. But in poker, they say you're not playing your hand, you're playing the other person.
Oh, yeah. No, when I have played poker, absolutely. I mean, I was flown in by Discovery Channel one time to watch, I'll call them semi-professional poker players. They got together once a week, but they played for pretty serious table stakes. One guy out of the 5 really had a pretty flat affect. I wouldn't have gained much from facial coding playing him, but the other 4 to one degree or another, and some of them were like slam dunk giveaways. I would have made nice money if I'd been given a seat at the table, but I was there to observe and say what I'd found hand by hand through the evening.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about poker. I mean, I know the fundamentals, but I don't play. But watching it on TV, I think it's such a crock that they let them wear sunglasses and hoodies and headphones. It's like,
oh yeah,
dude, you got to take that stuff off. This is mano a mano, because they can hide so much behind all that.
Yeah, no, at that point, you're almost like, same thing used to be true with Michael Jackson. People would say, can you facially code Michael Jackson? And I was like, after 20 surgeries, no. I mean, there is no natural muscle movement left on that face sufficient for me to code you and tell you what emotions he's feeling.
Yeah.
But if I looked at earlier in his career, I can see a lot of fear in Michael Jackson and in his famous siblings, because they had a very abusive father who ran through really tough practice sessions, and it really, it infiltrated into their life and their expressions.
Yeah. Well, but that brings up a good point. There is so much plastic surgery now, facelifts and Botox. Does that hinder your ability to read?
Well, I used to use biofeedback as well. And that was a problem because with biofeedback, you're only looking at two muscle movements, the corrugator and the zygomatic, the smile and frown muscle. So Botox disabled the frown muscle activity, and that was bad news. That was half the data. But with facial coding, you're looking at 44 muscles on the face, 44 each side of the face, in symmetry. So that's a lot more opportunities. So yes, you run some risk at times that, Botox or plastic surgery is taking away some of your data set. Yeah, it happens. But you're going to work with what you can work with. We all face our challenges in life, and it is what it is.
Right. Tell me a good story. Tell me a deal you negotiated that you shouldn't have won, but you did because this helped.
Well, I guess the one I tend to think of was Toyota, because they had about 5-6 people in the room, so I was outnumbered. By degrees, I figured out who was the decision maker because they didn't make it obvious to me. And about partway through the meeting, I saw the guy was drifting off. One of the things that's important is not just what people show in their face, it's also what they don't show, because your emotions turn on when you care about the outcome and you care about the other people in the room. So he had gone to a totally flat affect, and I realized I was going to have to do something. So I just dropped my usual patter, and I thought of a question. I don't recall it anymore. It's 15 years ago. I thought of a question that brought him back into the conversation. He started paying attention. He was intrigued with the answer I gave as the dialogue kept going, and I got the deal. But probably my favorite story involves actually in a foreign country. I was doing work in 2012 on the Mexican presidential race. So theirs are blissfully shorter than ours. There was just one debate. I watched one room of 25 voters live. They taped 3 other rooms with 25 voters each. So I had a 100-person sample. And I wanted to see, basically, they were the buyers. They were going to buy one of these candidates. And my vendor, or my customer, as it were, thought that there was a candidate, the one who was from the incumbent party, who was likely to win. And they were training all of their artillery on this person. And in the presentation, I said, no. You need to focus on Obrador. You're going to beat him, but he really did well with the voters, and he's going to cut your margin in half, your lead in half. And the key guy in the meeting said, Mr. Hill, you're wrong. In fact, you're dead wrong. You're not from Mexico. You don't know the country. You don't know the issues. Why? You don't even know Spanish. And I said, well, it's true that I haven't studied Spanish since high school, but I saw what I saw. It turns out I was half a percentage point off. That's it. So that's not too bad. That's a long way from dead wrong.
Yeah. Amen.
And believe me, I thought about sending him an email afterwards saying who's right, who's wrong, but I didn't do that.
Yeah, sometimes just let that sleeping dog lie, huh?
Exactly.
On that one on Toyota, I mean, seeing someone just drifting off, I mean, that's not really reading faces. I mean, isn't that just basic human nature? Like I can just see somebody's bored that I'm losing them.
Yes, but the key thing is once you start to reel in the fish, do they stay on the hook? So yes, the facial coding was not so operative there, although I had to disengage from the other people, and it meant that I was being visually oriented because I had a lot of distractions in the room being so outnumbered. No, the really key thing to the facial coding is once you start to try to move it through the conversation, threading the needle. So let's go back to anger, because obviously happiness is a wonderful emotion. It means that they are embracing you, hugging, they're open to consideration. But anger is the other heavyweight emotion here, because happiness and anger combined are about 70% of the average person's emoting. So the other 5 emotions are kind of like extra flavorings, but they're not the meat on the platter. So anger is really important because, for one thing, there's 9 different ways anger can show in the face. Let's take a couple of these flavors. If the eyebrows pinch together and lower, that's a pretty acceptable version of anger because it means they're concentrating, quite possibly. But if I see the concentration combined with the mouth pursing, the lips pressing together, that probably means I've tipped over from them concentrating to actually being confused instead. Because again, anger is, I want to be in control of my destiny and I want to make progress. And if you don't feel like you understand what's going on, or you don't understand the answer you were just given, then you don't feel like you're in control of things. So that's a really important nuance to pull out of the findings. Do the eyes go narrow? That's what I call snake eyes. They could be like kind of staring you down, doubting you, challenging you, not believing what you just told them. As a salesperson, you better be pretty alert to that. The mouth, pressing together, the lips, that's okay, maybe a little bit worrisome. What's definitely worrisome is that the mouth pulls together sufficiently that there's a bulge below the middle of the lower lip. That bulge tells you they're getting peeved. And I can tell you in a sales situation, once I was in Toronto, I was meeting with, I think it was not Best Buy, it was Home Depot. And the guy got that expression on his face. I had pushed too hard to get the incumbent out of the way. I picked it up. I tried without directly acknowledging it to figure out ways to soften the conversation to overcome that moment. Didn't work. Could not salvage the deal. He never took my follow-up email or phone call. What I saw is what I saw, and I was cooked.
Now you know.
Now I know. You can press, but you can't press too hard. That's the difficult dance as a salesperson, because statistically, as I'm sure you know better than most, the 6th, 7th, 8th meeting or contact, that's statistically where you close the deal. And the salesperson, of course, after about 2 or 3 times starts panicking, wondering whether they should give up or not. And yet you have to be like the velvet glove. You have to be persistent and resilient, but you can't be a pest. And that's why reading these 9 different forms of anger is so important, because anger can show they're really getting their back up. And you got to be able to read that.
Can you pick up as much over the phone? I mean, with this whole COVID thing, more and more people are going to video calls, which I imagine you appreciate.
Yes.
Can we pick up emotions on the phone just with voice?
You can. The problem with voice is you can't get to the specificity again. You're kind of back into body language territory. You get some feeling for things, but not the degree of accuracy you'd long for. I mean, I think any of us who have tried to close things by phone, you're seeing, how much energy there is in their voice. You're looking for listening for the pauses. You're looking for how declarative they are. So you can get into, how the sentences are structured. There's all sorts of things you can look for. But yes, is Zoom and Skype a godsend in my line of work? Absolutely. It's a wonderful thing. COVID's not a wonderful thing, but the prevalence of zooming up thanks to COVID, that is a good thing.
Yeah, amen. So you got 8 books. So About Face, Emotionomics, your most recent, so Famous Faces Decoded, a guidebook for reading others. Is it, do we send them to your website? It's sensorylogic.com, right?
Yeah, no, they would be able to order the books from that. But I also have a blog called Faces of the Week, which is a nice little easy primer for anyone in sales and doesn't have a lot of time. I keep it to 3 paragraphs or less. And every week I'm taking some news story and I'm examining the emotions that are exhibited on the face. And to the right side of those blog postings is an easy way to order the books. So it's called Faces of the Week, or you can access it through emotionswizard.com. And frankly, it ties in as you keep going through the blog past the 3 paragraphs, you'll see what my podcast episode is for the week, because I do something called Dan Hill's EQ Spotlight. And I have guests on who are really often exploring the role of emotions in business.
Oh, very cool. All right. I will link to those. Oh, you got the attorney couple in St. Louis, huh?
I do indeed.
Came out with their guns.
Yeah. Well, when I first looked at the guy, because I'm something of a fan of the movie Deliverance, he made me think of the Ned Beatty character. But when I studied his face more closely, there wasn't fear there, actually.
Right.
There was a little bit of a smile. He was kind of enjoying the moment, cradling his gun. His wife, on the other hand, was a bit more stressed out.
Yeah.
She was angrier and more fearful.
Yeah. Well, and that makes sense too, just in the situation. But yeah, I mean, when you really look at it, yeah, he's not freaked out.
No, he's not.
I would be.
A lot of things in life come down to us versus them. That's the difficult thing in sales, because you're just coming through the door, but you're trying to talk about we and the solution we'll get to. But, whether it's political, racial, your company versus my company, there's a lot of us, them in the world. That's
Right.
one of the reasons why we have to be facial coders. You have to figure out who's friend or foe, or who could become a friend.
Right.
LBJ, the former president, said, if you can't walk into the room and know who's with you and who's against you, you ain't worth spit as a politician.
Yeah.
No, you can call facial coding the spit test if you'd like.
Yeah. Do you think like the good salespeople just kind of know a lot of this intuitively? I mean,
I imagine
maybe I can't teach it, but I feel like I'm good at this. I can't teach it like you, but I feel like I've done this, kind of read the room, read the person, know when to shift gears.
No, I think anyone who's successful at this is going to have, first of all, for themselves, emotional resiliency to take the no's. But yes, they better be aware of their environment. You can't just turn on your presentation like it's a fire hose and think that's going to work well. My father was in charge of 3M's printed Post-it notes, production, sales, and marketing. And so what he did not like in his sales force were the people who asked for ever more literature that they could drop off on the desk afterwards. And he said, if you're talking more than half the time in the meeting, it's a really bad meeting.
Yeah.
You should be taking in the other party. So yes, I think they can pick up these things, but can they also maybe hone their act and take it to yet another level? There's a huge difference between a smile and a smirk. And when people ask me for the difference in business terms, I say, oh, that's really simple. It's called profitability.
Amen. Don't make me laugh, man. I'll cough.
Sorry about that.
Thank goodness for the mute button, huh? Oh, man. All right. So it's sensorylogic.com. I'm linking to that. I'm also linking to emotionswizard.com. And I'm going to be reading your blog post. So I'm glad you brought that up. Anything I missed? Anything I should have asked?
Well, I do want to tell them just a bit more about Famous Faces Decoded, because I'm trying to make it both instructive, helpful as a salesperson, but I made it fun as well. So I took 173 celebrities, everything from rock stars to Hollywood stars, famous CEOs, athletes. So I am using famous people to kind of help make you feel that you're emotionally fluent in terms of what emotions are about, what triggers them, and then what kinds of ways in which those emotions show in the face. So it's a fun read, but it's also an instructive read. I guess you could call it edutainment or something.
And so where is that? I'm on your site.
I have a section called books.
Yep, I'm on the books section.
It would be there. Or if you go to the blog, it would be on the right side of the blog postings each week.
Okay.
Yeah, Famous Faces Decoded, and a wild ride through the last 3 eras of Americana, and celebrities of all stripes in terms of personalities, looks, and backgrounds.
Yeah, you got an interesting here. 2 cheers for democracy, how emotions drive leadership style. You've got Lincoln, you've got Merkel, you've got Trump's famous,
yep,
whatever face.
That's an emotive guy.
So I didn't realize.
I actually went through and correlated all of the presidents emoting to how they are ranked for greatness by presidential scholars. I'm always looking for the correlation. Sometimes it can be to sales figures.
Sure.
Sometimes it can be to how the experts rank you for ability to do your job well.
Yeah, cool. I didn't realize. I just saw this. Does Angela Merkel have like a PhD in like physics or something like really hard?
Yeah, I believe it was in chemistry. It's definitely in the hard sciences.
Yeah.
But she is one smart cookie and very disciplined, as you might expect for a scientist type.
Yeah.
I was talking to someone who actually has a sibling who in Europe, works with the EU really closely, is at most of the high-level meetings, and characterized Merkel as, quote unquote, the only adult in the room.
Nice. She is certainly up for the challenge. So very interesting. Well, thank you, sir. Thanks for coming on the show. And I'm hoping things are calming down in Minneapolis. And maybe one day we can meet.
Yeah. So enjoy the nice weather in California. We're sweltering in the humidity around here.
No humidity here, but we are up in the 98-degree range now. So, we have these 40-degree days. So swings. It's 58 at night and 98 during the day. It's crazy.
That's a big swing.
It's a big swing, but I'll take it. I grew up in the South with humidity, and this ain't that bad.
That's right.
All right, Dan, thanks for coming to the show. Have a great day.
Thank you, Wes.
So we are these emotional, irrational creatures making decisions with our guts, with our instincts. What are you doing to connect at that deeper level? That affinity stuff, I love it. Can you go even deeper? What are you doing to really connect with your prospects? I think, asking better questions is important. Reading the body language, reading the signals, reading between the lines, right? Reading the signals that they're putting off. And I love this, reading their faces, their body language. What are they really doing? You've got to read between the lines. You've got to listen. You've got to pay attention. And that's why, in all of my training, when I work with my clients and everyone in the 30-day sales growth group, my goal is to get you to be able to be calm and present in the moment, okay, on the phone, in person, during a presentation, during the negotiation, so you can pick up everything that's happening. Today I rolled with 3 black belts, including my instructor. And these guys are super calm. They've all trained at least 10 years, I think 12 for the 2 guys, and my instructor like 34, 35 years. Okay, they've literally seen it all. And so when we start our sparring sessions, they're just super calm. They know they can handle whatever comes their way, but it's because they have failed more times than I've even tried. All right, so what are you doing to go through the cycles, to get the repetitions, the good repetitions, right? Practice does not make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. Today, we did a drill on a technique that I thought that I knew. And there were literally, in this simple move to bump someone off of you, if you've really screwed up, you're on your back and they're in a mounted position. It's bad news in jiu-jitsu. It's bad news in real world, right? If you're in a fight. But there were literally, how I grabbed their arm was one distinction. How I move my head is a second. How I place my feet was a third. How I bump, the angle. So there were at least 4 nuances in this move that I've already been doing for 3.5 years. 4 nuances that make all the difference. 3.5 years I've been doing this 5 to 6 days a week. And there were still 4 things in this one position. Now, how many positions are there? I mean, you could say dozens, right? There's certainly a handful of fundamental positions that you're in. And, so let's say there's, say there's 8 fundamental positions. And after 3.5 years, I'm still missing nuances on 4 nuances of each. So there's still 32 subtleties of moves that I think I already know. So what else is there, right? So that's just the nuances, not counting the fundamental pieces of that. So I hope you get my point. There's always something to learn. There's always something you can refine and improve. Are you committed to the growth? And look, it's painful. I spend money for the course. I got to wash my stuff every day. I'm sore. I take supplements. Tomorrow I'm going to the chiropractor. I buy books. I buy additional supplemental courses. I train with guys privately from time to time because I want to get better. So do you treat selling as a profession, or are you just bouncing around looking for the easy buck, looking for the hack, the shortcut, the easy button? Okay, I don't think you are, because that's why you're listening to this. So it tells me you're invested in your future. you're treating this a little bit differently. You're treating this as a profession. So look, invest in yourself, okay? If you want some private coaching and consulting, I offer that. But, start with the 30-day sales growth. You can start month to month. You can save 50% and join for the year, okay? And I guarantee you'll be glad you're in a group like this for this upcoming year, because we got a hard rain coming. Money will be made. Tears will be shed, but money and fortunes will be made in the next 24 months if you're positioned right. Okay? Thanks for listening. Go sell something.